E.
I'm Jared Bowen. Tonight on Greater Boston, 3 unknown objects have been shot down over the U.S. and Canada in as many days, and defense officials seem to have more questions than answers. Then later, 50 years after prisoners of war were released from the so-called Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam, a group of them are telling their stories in a new exhibition from the American Heritage Museum. The museum's president joins me ahead. And finally, remembering Tony and Emmy Award-winning set designer and Providence resident Eugene Lee, who died last week. What on earth is going on in the skies over North America? The U.S. military shot down yet another airborne object yesterday, this time over Lake Huron. According to the Biden administration, it was out of, quote, an abundance of caution. Although this one was reportedly not deemed a military threat. It came just hours after another object was shot out of the sky over Canada's Yukon territory on Saturday. And on Friday, U.S. fighter jets shot down yet another one over northern Alaska. And all this roughly a week after the military took down that surveillance balloon from China. On ABC This Week yesterday, a couple of hours before news broke about the fourth object, which, by the way, is technically an unidentified flying object, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said there may be some similarities between the Chinese balloon and the latest aerial whatevers. But as for their origin, that may be even less clear.
Were these balloons Friday and Saturday night?
They believe they were, yes, but much smaller than the first one.
We don't know the origin of the object.
Whether it's state-owned or corporate-owned or privately owned, we just don't know.
I'm joined now by Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how do we even begin to decipher what is happening in this moment?
Well, the government identifies some objects as being Chinese and as a result shoots them down. This subject has been discussed in the past, but it had a stigma attached to it when pilots and military personnel reported about unidentified aerial phenomena. And about a year ago, the government decided to establish a new office that will assemble all the data available from all branches of government. And that office delivered a report a month ago to the U.S. Congress, and most of it was classified. And my guess is now the government is paying much more attention to what flies in the sky. And altogether, it's a blessing, because for national security purposes, we don't want espionage coming from our sky, and there could be other risks from objects above.
Well, this is, I'll just interrupt to say, I've been wondering, it doesn't seem like coincidence, so is it just the fact that there's suddenly more scrutiny about this, or is there an escalation in surveillance?
Well, it's both, because in the past there was a stigma on reports, and as a result, military personnel didn't report about these things because they didn't want to be laughed at. And the stigma was removed, apparently, because now the government takes it seriously and responds to it. And engagement is the best testimony for taking it seriously. And it's obviously a mixed bag. There were hundreds of reports over the past year from government-related personnel. And so even if most of them are identified, we want to know what all of them are. And, because even if one is of extraterrestrial origin, that would be huge news for humanity.
Well, this is where the conversation went today. It went there over the weekend. I think it really escalated today, the thought that we could have aliens surveilling us. What's the likelihood of that?
Well, we cannot gauge the likelihood. We know that most of the stars formed billions of years before the sun. So if there were civilizations on habitable planets like the Earth around other stars, they predated us, most of them. And they had plenty of time to send spacecraft that will reach us within 1 billion years from the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. So the question is whether we live in such a reality, and the only way to find out is by looking up. Rather than arguing about it. And of course, the government worries about objects for national security purposes, but that's not my concern as a scientist. I would like to look at the rest, those that they cannot identify and that could originate from an extraterrestrial origin. And so I established the Galileo project at Harvard University, and we are funded. We already built an observatory that monitors the sky in the optical band, in the infrared band, in radio, audio, 24/7. We are starting to collect data because the sky is not classified. It's only the government sensors that are classified. That's why the data is not available to us.
So what's the likelihood that that will happen? It was big news last year when the government started to concede that there were these reports by military fighter pilots and whatnot. And so is the government finally breaking down to some degree? Is there an opportunity for you to learn more?
Yeah, I think the more people pay attention to these objects, the faster we will get to the bottom of what they are. And as far as I'm concerned, as an astronomer, the first objects from outside the solar system were discovered by astronomers over the past decade. And the first three of them, 2 meteors and an object called Oumuamua, appear to be unlike any of the space rocks that were in the solar system and were looked at before. So there is something weird about objects coming from interstellar space for me as an astronomer, and I'm trying to do the best to figure them out. And we're planning an expedition to Papua New Guinea in 2 months that looking after the fragments of the first interstellar meteor to figure out what it was. And at the same time, we have the Galileo project monitoring the sky. The only way to make progress is by collecting evidence. There is no point to argue about it.
What do you make of the altitude at which we're finding these devices now? The White House, at a press conference today, at least a spokesperson for the National Security Council said this is concerning. This is why they had to be taken down, because it was a threat to civilian aircraft. Is there a significance to them being at the altitude at which we keep finding them and fairly low to the ground, I guess we could say?
Well, the first balloon that was in the news was above the elevation that planes are flying at. And you may ask, why don't they just use satellites to spy on the US? And the answer is you don't get as good resolution from high up as you do from those balloons. And the other thing is balloons can carry weapons. And we don't want them to fly over the US. So there are plenty of reasons for the US to monitor the objects in the sky. But from a scientist's point of view, that's very good that the stigma was removed. Now the government is engaged. And the point is, we will figure out it's a mixed bag, and some of the objects may be different than others. And let's just find out what they are from high-resolution images and monitoring their motion. And the thing is, the government, the best data they have, they will never release because they don't want adversaries to be aware of the quality of the sensors being used. But the Galileo project that I established at Harvard University is collecting data that will be open to the public, and the analysis will be transparent because we just want to advance our scientific knowledge. If there is any human-made object in the sky, I'll send the information straight to DC. I have no interest in that. I'm seeking a higher intelligence in outer space because I did not find it as of yet here on Earth.
Well, and now that this is beginning to unfold, have you had a change in thinking or optimism or for your hypothesis going forward as these latest news events unfold? And we probably have no reason to expect that they're going to stop, given the high number of craft that was taken down over the weekend.
Well, I think it's a good development, both in terms of the security of the nation, that the government is paying attention to espionage from up there, but also from a scientific point of view, because they remove the objects that we don't care about. Okay, so now we will focus on other types of objects, and the more they pay attention to things in the sky, the better we will understand them. So it's a win-win situation, and I see it as a very positive development that stigma was removed, because that's the only way to advance our knowledge.
Well, Avi Loeb, it's been great to speak with you. We know that your clothes were lost in a recent luggage mishap, so you're very casual but thinking seriously about this. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, it's been 50 years since the first American prisoners of war were first brought home from the Wa Lo prison in Vietnam. Known to prisoners as the Hanoi Hilton, Wa Lo held hundreds of American soldiers, including the late Senator John McCain, between 1964 and 1973. 50 years ago this week, with the end of the Vietnam War, the first of those prisoners were released and flown home to the United States. Some 600 American POWs who later described the extreme torture, isolation, and starvation they endured there.
They blindfolded me, bound and gagged me, put me on a truck and bumped me over the 27 miles in the back of a dump truck into the Hanoi Hilton to begin 6 years. I'm put in a cell. I've not seen another soul, and I'm left by myself. And it was the worst period in my life, including the torture. I wanted to die. There is no question about that. Everything in my life had been taken away from me.
Their capture, imprisonment, and eventual release is the focus of a new exhibition at the American Heritage Museum, featuring an original cell shipped from Vietnam, first-hand accounts from soldiers like those you just heard from, and interactive displays. The exhibit offers a look at the brutal conditions faced by American prisoners. I'm joined by Rob Collings now. He's president of the American Heritage Museum. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Jared.
Well, I just kind of outlined in the broadest sense we'll talk about why it was called the Hanoi Hilton, what it was like, but what was the essence of what was happening there?
The Hanoi Hilton was a prison that went back to the late 1800s, a French colonial prison that a lot of the airmen and soldiers were held in during the Vietnam War. And they endured some of the most brutal physical and psychological torture. They would be in isolation for, in many cases, 3-4 years before they saw anyone else. So it's an amazing story of the human spirit, of how they survived this. And they really kind of came together and pulled one another up when they had these really, really awful days.
And I toured this with you recently, and the experience I felt that I had there was just incredible, like any museum experience where you can have firsthand contact with something that actually existed, that I think many of us picture from the John McCain pictures, actually knowing where he suffered. What's the experience that you expect visitors will have when they come face to face with an actual prison cell?
So everyone knows the P.O.W. MIA flag. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. But what is that about? What did they go through? And to go inside one of those cells, actually stand on the concrete floor they were standing. You see these concrete bed slabs with shackles that their legs would be shackled to. It brings a whole new understanding of what it was like. And it's still mind-boggling to me, going in there day after day, that they could have endured that.
I think one of the things that was so impactful to me was we saw one of the accounts there from your museum, the interviews that you did with surviving POWs about that experience. Once you're hearing the brutality that they endured as you're looking at this prison, it's nearly incomprehensible. But you worked with the POWs, the surviving POWs, for this exhibition. How did you work with them? What did they share? Because again, this is something I'm sure they don't particularly want to remember.
The POWs that we were working with are just an amazing group of gentlemen. What they went through, how normal they are today, when you think about the torture and abuse they went through, then physically and mentally, they're so amazing. But we needed them for multiple reasons. One is there's no photos of what this looked like. The Vietnamese didn't take any pictures of what the torture room looked like or anything like that. You had to go back and get those accounts from them. And one of those gentlemen, Mike McGrath, he has just a remarkable memory. So when he came home, he was sketching everything as an artist, sketching what it looked like. And those are your firsthand accounts, really, of what was going on there. So that was a part of it for this reconstruction of these cells, because they'd been deconstructed. They came to us as pallets of bricks and concrete slabs and so forth that had to be put back together again. But then it's that human story, it's that essence of what they went through. And to have them on film, projected in these cells, telling the story of what it was like, makes it exceptionally real for people when they go through.
So how did they survive this? Some of these men were there for, I think, up to 7 years, and it's not just men. In a few cases, there were women as well. Solitary confinement for years and years and years, no access to the outside world, not supposed to even be able to communicate with other prisoners. How did they survive?
It's almost impossible to imagine they survived, especially when you bring up like this isolation, that they were by themselves. The first airman shot down as a POW, Ev Alvarez, was there in 1964. Now, it's a lonely thought to be in a prison cell in solitary confinement. Then when you know you're the only one, I can't even begin to imagine it. Then there was a second, a third, and they came in. And shortly thereafter, they established this tap code. And it was arranging the alphabet in a 5x5, and they'd be tapping to one another messages. Now, getting caught doing that meant you would go into the shackles. And in some cases for months on end. And I don't mean at nighttime. They would be in leg shackles for months on a concrete slab. But it was so important to communicate, like we're doing right now. Could you imagine 3-4 years without communicating with another human being? So even just if you're tapping through a wall and you're able to let them know on the other side you're not alone, that was amazing. Now later in the war, after about 1970, they're putting a lot of prisoners together for a variety of reasons. That changed everything for them. You might have been in a little cell and it was crowded and there were 4 guys in there, but that's 4 guys where you can start to suck information out of their heads. They called it Hanoi University. You might speak German, I might speak Spanish. We're going to teach you in another language.
Just something to do for the 24 hours that you're in.
Keep your mind occupied. That was the biggest thing, was keeping your mind occupied, because that solitary confinement is one of the worst things imaginable. Your mind just starts running away all the time.
Well, you also illustrate in this exhibition the terror that they had. They would hear the keys jangling as they were coming, and they knew that meant that they were going to be pulled out of the cell and tortured again. We know that John McCain could never lift his arm above a certain length because their arms were pulled out of their sockets. And yet, going back to the Hanoi Hilton, that was a sense of humor that they had. It was their title, the Hanoi Hilton, in the midst of all of this trauma.
So the name Hanoi Hilton came with the second prisoner. And he just wrote it. They had a little tiny piece of toilet paper, was normally, that was their paper if they were lucky enough to have any. And they would write down, he wrote down this message when he saw this third airman get shot down looking through a hole, "Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton," and he hid this message. That's how it became known as that. It was a sense of humor. It was joking. And humor was so important to them. They all broke at some point. They went past the code of conduct, name, rank, serial number. But they would have these stories because the Vietnamese couldn't believe like an F-4 Phantom could fly off of an aircraft carrier. They said, no, it needs a 5,000-foot runway. And they would say, well, we have a lot of ships out in the Gulf of Tonkin. We just line them up in a row and we make 5,000 feet. They would do all sorts of things that for them, when they went back to their cell, brought them a sense of joy almost, that they were just having these jokes that they could have.
For the opening of this exhibition recently, you had a number of POWs there. What was that experience like?
That was an amazing day to have 19 of these POWs there at that exhibit and to have them up on stage and to hear their stories. And it wasn't what you would think. There was not the gory stories of what they went through with, as you said, dislocating shoulders was a very popular thing for the Vietnamese to do for torturing. But it was the stories of resilience. It was a story we can all relate to. We've all had difficult days, and they had really difficult days, but they were there for one another, and how they came together and brought one another back up when they were at their lowest point. That was the inspiration for me.
As I mentioned, this is the 50th anniversary. We're now in the 50th anniversary cycle of when the first POW started coming home. What was their experience like? Because I think we recall that the experience for a lot of Vietnam veterans was they were coming back to a country that was very hostile to them for participating in the war.
So we have these POWs returning to the U.S. to a very different place than what they left. They missed out on a lot of what went on. You know, when the first guy was shot down, the Beatles hadn't come to the U.S. By the time he came out, the band had broken up. Man had walked on the moon. MLK had been assassinated. Look at all these events that defined that period. But they did have something. They did have a lot of resources that were expended on them for their physical condition, for their mental condition, and also they were celebrities when they came back. They came back to more of a hero's welcome. They had a dinner at the White House with John Wayne and all these people. And to a degree, they felt a survivor's guilt. And they said, we came home to this, to a White House dinner, yet everyone else came home to getting spit on at the airport, and those guys lost legs and arms and things. So it's amazing how someone who could go through such a horrible experience still feel survivor's guilt.
Rob, before I let you go, I have to quickly ask, in our last segment, we were just talking about shooting down these UFOs. It's this phenomenon that seems to be happening now, but it's not a new one, as you pointed out to me when I was at your museum. When did this start, as you can prove?
Well, balloons for observation go back to the Civil War. And in World War I, they were a mainstay of observation behind enemy lines, looking in. What was the other side doing, moving material and troops to the front? So we have a World War I aircraft, actually America's first fighter plane, a Newport 28, French-built aircraft. And those were predominantly used for shooting down other aircraft, but balloons were a big part of that. And a very, very difficult target, because the balloons then were tethered and had a large amount of anti-aircraft guns around it. Now we have F-22s shooting down balloons, which is a much easier prospect, but 110 years on, and things are back to the same.
And yours is staying put, though. It hasn't been conscripted yet.
No, it hasn't been conscripted yet. They have something better to use.
Well, Rob, the exhibition has stayed with me for the days since I saw it about the Hanoi Hilton. Thank you so much for being here to talk about it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Finally tonight, remembering the Emmy and Tony Award-winning set designer and longtime Providence resident Eugene Lee, who died last week at age 83. If you don't know him by name, you surely know his work. He created sets for Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and the original Broadway productions of Wicked and Sweeney Todd. Lee also designed for countless productions of the great Trinity Rep in Providence. Back in 2014, GBH News' Bob C. and I caught up with Lee in his home and studio.
There are the drawers filing away decades of Eugene Lee's designs, the binders for new projects, and the self-made boxes holding the old ones.
Yeah, that is it.
Models, memorabilia, and memories are piled high around Lee. He's the famed and much awarded set designer behind a host of Broadway shows, Saturday Night Live, and now The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon.
What about The Tonight Show? I saw your drawer there.
The Tonight Show, yes. Well, I like doing that. Jimmy's a nice kid.
Recently, my WGBH radio colleague Bob C. and I ventured to Providence to see Lee at his home and studio. For Bob, it was a reunion since they worked together in theater decades ago. For me, it was a whirlwind tour with the restless, self-deprecating, and infectiously entertaining design master.
So how many of these boxes do you have?
Hundreds. I don't know why I'm saving them. Someone will toss them all out eventually. I go to Los Angeles tomorrow to deal with this. A little pilot for Maya Rudolph, a little primetime pilot. I went out a few weeks ago and found a studio I liked at Universal. I picked it because it has a huge swimming pool there. Has a cover on, hasn't been opened in 25 years. And they said, we can't open it. We're very scared of it. You know, they're very scared of basements in Los Angeles.
Inside his elaborately decorated home, filled with collections of all kinds, Lee reminisces. His big break, creating the enduring design for Saturday Night Live, was derived from his love of New York's grimier side.
You know, New York at the time was really not in good shape. Subway cars were graffitied over. The Radio City Music Hall was empty. 42nd Street was filled with movie theaters and porn theaters. I kind of like that myself. That Disney stuff don't work with me. But anyway, so we use real materials, real brick, I like real things.
Which he also used in his 1979 design of Sweeney Todd, which won Lee the second of his 3 Tonys.
Oh, we took a lot of pieces from Sweeney Todd from here. In fact, most of Sweeney Todd came from, crumbling foundries around the state, Because these real items, goes without saying, were very heavy. You know, my favorite stagehands remind me of this from time to time.
Lee says his design sensibility generally rises from the script itself. In Wicked, for which he won his 3rd Tony, he was inspired by the book's clock motif.
I started looking at gears and stuff. It's like a real item, you know? I mean, they're turning at different speeds, you know, and then, you know, we took a few clocks and did bad things to them. They always say I tossed it down the stairs, but I don't know if it's true. But whatever I did really bad things to the clocks. They never worked again. And then we took the gears and hot glued them into the model initially just to see how we liked them. And then, I don't know, we liked them and we kept them.
To his own chagrin, Lee says his home also sets the stage.
If you go to the kitchen, you occasionally, if you start turning over dishes down in the bottom of the pile someplace, you see a little red dot or something, a little sticker. Kind of means it got on a set, you know?
So that's for your own
camera? That was just so it wouldn't get lost at the time, so hopefully it came back to you at the end. I always say I'll never loan anything, but then of course I instantly break my own rule.
At 75, Lee says with 3 musicals and 5 plays in the works, not to mention his ongoing television projects and relationship with Trinity Repertory Company in Providence, he's busier than ever. And ever loyal, when Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels took the helm of Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show, he turned once again to Lee.
I asked him what he wanted at the time, and he said he thought he should be elegant. And I thought, that's nice. Elegant is nice. Because Jimmy always wears a nice suit and tie. I mean, he's a good-looking kid, like him. And so we try, in the case of Jimmy's set, we just tried to make it elegant and tried to make the proportions very elegant.
Lorne Michaels is also the reason Lee is still working, pointing out that SNL's announcer is close to 100 and its lighting designer is 90. Michaels won't let him retire.
I'm just a baby. I think it's better to be busy. You know, I probably sometimes should say no to things. But I tend to say yes more than no. And I try to make it work out. Usually it works out somehow.
What a great day we had with him. I still remember he was like a child running around wanting to show us everything in his home and studio. Well, that is it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Jared Bowen. Thanks for watching. Good night.
In 1960,